If you had to use 5 words and 5 words only to describe Ruby, her life, everything that she did, which 5 words do you think you would use?
Oh, don't play that bullshit game. You can't do it in 5 words. I don't know. She was
self-confident,
compassionate,
caring,
strong.
She's fearless,
tenacious,
powerful as a mother, patient,
wonderful,
genuine. She was smart.
She connected everything together.
Ruby Sutton was born in the southern United States and grew up in Lexington, Mississippi. Ruby and her husband, James, moved to Chicago in the early 1950s, where he had a job with the Illinois Central Railroad as a repairman. He was transferred to Galena, Illinois, and then Dubuque in 1959. The Suttons moved to Dubuque when it was one of the whitest cities in the United States. At that time, Dubuque landlords limit the few people of color in town to the West 8th and Rock Street area.
We think things are rough now, or we thought things were rough in the 90s. She was in Dubuque when, it was like less than 5 Black families probably in Dubuque, Iowa.
Before James even stepped foot in Dubuque, he got a taste of how Black people were welcomed in a city, as police officers told him to turn around and get right back on that train. And the hostilities did not stop once he started working.
People just weren't, nice to him and everything, would always put items in his sandwich and lunchbox and everything so he couldn't eat the food. So every day my mother had to walk down and bring his lunch so he could have something to eat.
Finally, Ruby stepped in and talked to the railway management to put an end to her husband's mistreatment.
She's like, if you really want this railroad to be a success, then you have to stop this. Well, they did want the railroad to be a success, so they did stop it. Because it came down to more of a financial issue than anything.
Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the end of the Sutton family's battle with racial discrimination. When it came time for Ruby to have her children, no doctors in Dubuque would deliver them. Instead, she had to be driven across the state border to a small hospital in Hazel Green, Wisconsin.
It was true. My birth certificate would say Hazel Green, Wisconsin. All of us. All 8 of us will say Hazel Green, Wisconsin. So yeah, it was definitely true. It was a dark time here. A baby is a baby. It's a child by God, but, at that time, people didn't see it that way.
And the more I learned, I could see how terribly unfair that was on her. But she made her home here. She raised her children here. And when I think about what a risk that was for her to do, it was very risky for Ruby to raise her kids here.
My dad always told me we study reading, writing, and arithmetic for certain reasons. We study reading so we can read about what happened in the past. We study writing so we can help the people in the future. And the only thing changed in this world is numbers. That's the only thing changed in Dubuque. Because if we read about what happened in Dubuque in the historical context of it, in 1925, Dubuque had 50,000 Klan members march in Dubuque. And that's just 1925, so that's like a generation from me.
In 1991, Dubuque had 57,000 white citizens, just 331 Black citizens, and one thing more, a revitalized race relations problem. The Dubuque Race Relations Community Action Exploratory Committee created a plan that would bring 100 minority families to the city. In reaction to the work of the task force and the issue of encouraging minorities to come to the city, Dubuque became the scene of multiple cross burnings. On November 30th, 1991, Reverend Thomas Robb, the national director of the Ku Klux Klan, arrived in Dubuque and spoke to a rally attended by an estimated 200 people in front of the Dubuque City Hall. Members of the Dubuque chapter NAACP staged a counter rally, estimated to include 200 people in Washington Park.
We knew that the cross burning started here in Dubuque. And then we heard that the Klan was coming for a rally downtown. But there was one time that I was walking to the prayer presence with my friend Father Joe Dyer, who was an African American priest. I just sense a strong sense of hatred. And as we were going around the corner, there was the Klan, but they had new uniforms. They weren't wearing the robes and the face coverings. They were wearing white shirts, and they had an emblem here on their shirt. And Joe turned to me and he said, "That's the new Klan." And I went, "Oh my God."
You're talking about cross burnings and the really overt, the Klan rallies, the really overtly racist stuff that was happening in the late 80s, early 90s. And we did have another cross burning.
They still haven't found any people who's responsible for that. We just had that 2 to 3 years ago.
Our agency was an agency in order to help people in whichever way needed, if we had available funds. And usually, if we didn't have it, we would find a way to get funds so we could help people that need them.
From its founding in 1973 to her retirement in 2009, Ruby Sutton worked as the outreach manager for the Operation New View Community Action Agency, an organization that was dedicated to alleviating poverty in the Dubuque area. Upon her retirement, Mayor Roy Buell declared November 15th Ruby Sutton Day to recognize her substantial contributions to equality and justice in the region.
Ruby is considered an institution within the community and has been called the Mother Teresa of Dubuque. Through her work, as well as her volunteer involvement, she has touched the lives of thousands of people throughout Dubuque, Delaware, and Jackson counties. Ruby is a tireless champion of justice, human rights, diversity, and for people in need.
And I think that's what a humanitarian is. She looked beyond faults, looked beyond silly things that we always look at and prejudge and discriminate and put people down. She looked beyond that and focused on the need. If someone came to her and said, "I need this," she focused on that need to help that person.
Because there's a lot of people who really need help. And they need help from people who recognize that they need help in more ways than one. And I always like to reach out to people who have less. And most people that I dealt with specifically had less.
She was somebody that cared about people, and she demonstrated that caring through her actions. And she was always attempting to bring people together around different issues to solve problems. And she did it in such a way that when she got involved, her involvement was widely accepted by anybody who happened to be dealing with whatever the issue was at the time.
She said very few, but when she did speak, it was mountains. So that's what that's my memory of. She would tell it like it is. If it needed to be said, Ruby had no problem with telling you the truth.
In 1989, Ruby Sutton received the Dubuque NAACP First Humanitarian Award, which was later renamed the Ruby Sutton Award in her honor. The Dubuque NAACP Ruby Sutton Award is intended to exemplify everything that Ruby stood for, such as positive civic engagement, equality for all, and the fight against racial injustice and poverty.
She was always a model. They created the Ruby Sutton Award in her honor because they knew of all that she had done here in the city and what an impact she had made. So each person coming on as leader certainly had their leadership skills, but none of us have forgotten what Ruby Sutton did for NAACP here in Dubuque.
Her caring and persistent leadership has been felt in numerous organizations, including the NAACP Dubuque Branch, Dubuque Area Congregations United, Dubuque Community Food Pantry, Project Concern, Dubuque Rescue Mission, Dubuque Human Rights Commission, Dubuque Dispute Resolution Center, Dubuque Community Advisory Panel, Dubuque Community Schools Education Advisory Committee, Mercy Medical Center Institutional Ethics Committee, as well as dozens of other organizations.
She would always say, I'm not doing this for a award or a pat on the back. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So, I mean, she would get these awards and throw them in a drawer somewhere. She's like, oh, they want me to go to this event tonight. They're giving me some award. I'm tired of these awards. You know? And because she was very humble. She didn't boast about what she did. It was the people she helped who told you of how she helped them.
I've seen peoples grow. When you reach out to peoples and they receive an opportunity that somebody cares, has feeling, their face just light up. My grandmother taught me, you get your rewards in heaven for doing the right thing. So I'm not there yet, but I'm trying to do the right thing.
Ruby Sutton passed away in 2015, but her legacy continues. Her daughter Lynn has followed in her mother's footsteps by becoming a community activist. Lynn was the first African American to serve on the Dubuque City Council, and she is avidly working to better her community by improving housing and combating food insecurity and injustice.
I don't care who the person is, what they've done, it doesn't give people the just cause to mistreat them. And that, unfortunately, we're still battling that in our city, in our nation today. In some ways, we think we've come so far, but yet it tells us we're still here and we're still in these conditions. So how far have we really come? And how much further do we need to go? But we truly have to unite and come on some common ground.
The city of Dubuque hasn't forgotten about her either. A year after her passing, the Multicultural Family Center was renamed in her honor by a unanimous vote from the Dubuque City Council. Today, the building stands prominently on Central Avenue, just down the street from City Hall and the old Operation New View building, proudly displaying Ruby's name to anyone driving through downtown Dubuque. And Anthony Allen, once her protege at Operation New View, now uses methods he learned from Ruby to continue to work towards racial equality as a leader of the Dubuque NAACP.
So whether it has to do with law enforcement, whether it has to do with the judicial system in itself, I try to work toward, Ruby always say we have to be there. If you're not there, then you won't hear, but more importantly, they won't hear you. So my goal immediately became, I always sit at the table for the people who don't have a voice.
And I thought, my goodness, if we could all have just that 1 ounce of faith she had, how much better would our world be today?
You can change laws, we can make rules. You can do that. That's the easy part. The hard part is changing hearts and minds, because people are resistant to change and they're going to deny there's anything wrong because we're so intent on keeping what we have.